This is no time for fear. This is a time for faith and determination. Don't lose the vision here, carried away by emotion. Hold on to all that you hide in your heart. There's one thing that's always been true. It holds the word together. God is in control. We're talking about God is this week on the Grace Hour show. This podcast is coming to you live from the home of Greater Grace Church in Baltimore. I'm Pastor Steve Andrulonis. I'll be guiding our discussion today. We're talking about God is sovereign, and so we trust him. And those words that I just spoke are from a older contemporary Christian song. Twyla Paris sang it in 1993, God is in control. And we believe that his children will not be forsaken. God is in control. That's the way the chorus sort of goes. And this idea of God's sovereignty, God being in charge, is something that's throughout the Bible. And, we know in Psalm 115, verse 3, it says, God does as he pleases. So this is maybe something that you wrestle with, the fact that God is in control. And if he's in control, why do so many chaotic things seem to happen? If God was in control, why is this guy leading this country and this guy leading that country and this woman in charge here? And, what does it all mean that God is in control? And, maybe you struggle with trust issues because, the sovereignty of God is a big subject. Here's a simple definition. This is from John Piper. God is powerful and authoritative to the extent of being able to override all other powers and authorities. Pastor Schaller, would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, it's clear and simple. Does God have the authority over things? And I think, we have a great book in the Bible, the book of Job, a person who is suffering and experiencing things. And at the climax of this long trial, we don't know exactly how long it went on for Job. At the end, Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do everything and that no thought can be withheld from you. And, God can do anything, and God also knows what thoughts are being thought before we even know them. But the idea of sovereignty and the idea of trusting God, it's like, it's a category in our Bibles that we need. Now, maybe you have a verse you land on when you're thinking about that.
Oh, yeah, all the time. I have Romans 9:19. When it talks about Pharaoh's heart being hardened, then the counter to that would be, well, who could resist God's sovereignty? If he hardens Pharaoh's heart, then where is the free will? And that argument is a rational, logical argument, but it's countered by the Apostle Paul saying, Thou wilt say then unto me, why does he find fault for who hath resisted his will? And then, let me get it exactly right, because it's not in this the book I'm reading right there. The follow-up is verse 20. Nay, but, O man, this is a rebuke. Nay, but, O man, who are you that reply against God? Who are you to speak against his sovereignty? He does whatever he pleases. He is in heaven and he does whatever he pleases. Psalm 115:3, which you just quoted. And then the argument regarding that is, well, then what about free will? And then the writer, Paul, says, Nay, but, O man, who are you to reply against God? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, Why have you made me thus? Hath not the potter power over the clay? Of the same to make one vessel unto honor, another unto dishonor. So there's Paul defending sovereignty and also our attitude about sovereignty. I think we have two themes here. One is, what is sovereignty, and what is my attitude about it?
Yeah, that's basically what it's saying. God is this. Throughout the week we've been addressing these questions. And God is this, so we trust Him. So that's what our thing is. God is sovereign, so we have trust in Him. We always go. I think we get into those arguments about predestination, election. These terms that were introduced during the Reformation period. John Calvin, others were talking about this idea, really using the book of Romans, which is really talking about the overarching rule of God in all of life. Paul is saying in those first 3 chapters in particular, the need of every person to become transformed in a way, to be born again. He doesn't use those terms in Romans, but Jesus did. You must be born again in order to see the kingdom of God. And I guess that's the idea of what does it mean to trust, and what does it mean to have our own freedom, and how do we see God? It seems to me that these things are, instead of battle words, we know that there's been throughout church history, John Wesley in particular was of a certain persuasion, and another man, Charles Simeon, and others were of another persuasion about, election and predestination, and whether, we could be secure in our salvation. And the idea of God being sovereign and us being elected unto salvation is these are words for comfort, not words for drawing up battle lines.
Oh,
and I think that's we take a word of comfort and turn it into conflict. And how much is going on over here in the theological circles? Well, if you take this word and you dissect it this way, and you look at this original language, and you go back to this early church father, and you build this all, what say ye? And the other guy is saying that whosoever will may come.
Right.
Whoever calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Yeah, but what about, so I'm just saying, we're saying I like that picture that you've said, and I think it's in the back of I think there's in the back of a Thompson Chain Bible, there's this little, have you ever seen that? It's sort of like a brick wall that's built there in the back of and it shows you've drawn that picture before. Whosoever will may come, but when you come in, you realize that you are elected and predestined, but you don't really know it until you choose to walk through the door. Mm-hmm. So the idea that God having his will and purpose over all that we do and say, and is a comforting thing. It's a comforting thing, and it's designed to build trust in us rather than to create a conflict, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very well. Very good. Well said. Election, what we're talking about is the standard debate between a Calvinist or a hyper-Calvinist and an Arminian, and free will versus sovereignty. But I like what you just said, that, when Jesus said, I have chosen you, I have chosen you, so in John 15. So people struggle with that, but can we use it as comforting? Mm-hmm. Can we realize it must be that God has called me? Mm-hmm. And can we teach that to people without stumbling into some theological debate based in pure logic? And but let's go deeper into communion. And communion is logic. There is logic in the communion, but there's something more. Mm-hmm. Personal words that go to your heart, words that go beyond just pure reason. There's another part about sovereignty that I think we have to realize, and that is that there is an unfolding in history of God's plan. Mm-hmm. And whether you're talking about what century you're talking about, to realize that God is sovereign in history, and history is actually going somewhere. It's going toward the second coming of Christ. Mm. And that is managed by heaven. Heaven has the ultimate authority for what happens in the world. Many times we are in micro viewing our own lives. Why did I get a flat tire? Why didn't I get that job? Why didn't that woman marry me? And why was my child born with a disability? And the sovereignty of God and the unfolding of history and where it is going. Would you like to say something about that, Pastor?
The way that God is, you mean the way that God is allowing and guiding the progression of things?
Yeah.
It's a mystery to us. It's a great mystery to us that that things progress the way they do. We don't see the thing behind everything. We know that this is the ultimate event that will happen is when Jesus returns again. We had the one ultimate event, Christmas, that we just celebrated. Jesus became a human being, lived as a human being. And I think our relationship to Christ maybe should help us form an idea. You're teaching Hebrews, and you've gotten to that place a couple times where, early in the teaching in December, we were talking about he learned obedience by the things that he suffered. And it's a concept that even Christ in the person as a human being had to learn obedience. And, there was a fulfillment we know from Revelation that the Lamb was slain before the foundation of the world, that the Lamb of God who is Christ. So we know that was a determination and a counsel that was settled upon, and then the Son would take on flesh and bone. So we know that the Son who made all things now lives according to everything that he made. So that includes gravity, that includes hunger, that includes the pain and suffering that he had. So he learned, through the things that he suffered, he learned what it was like to be like us. And then the ultimate, now there's the ultimate thing that we're looking to is that this is the way things are going to end. I love the verse in the King James, Psalm 119. I think it's not 165, but it's Psalm 119. It says, where the psalmist says, I have seen the end of all perfection. Doesn't say it that way in all versions, but I love that version because I think that's, God has given us the record of where things are going. And, we may not, day to day, we make decisions, we have freedom, we have to use wisdom, we have to be proverbial, to say that we have to make choices that way. And, but, ultimately this seeing this, like the famous C.S. Lewis quote that, those who are heavenly minded, are the ones who do the most earthly good because they know where this is going. And so that is sort of like knowing that God has made a determination. He has revealed his determination to us on a certain level. And that gives us sort of an ability to trust him and to trust, to trust the decisions that we make according to the scriptures. That's the way I think that, because we know where the scriptures are going and we know where the plan of the ages is going from eternity to eternity, because we see that in the Bible, then we can know that the decisions we make today will ultimately contribute to that ultimate reality that God will bring to our planet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. To think of God testing us. So here we have Abraham offering up his son. Mm-hmm. In God's sovereignty, God knowing all things and God being God, when he called Abraham, did he actually know what Abraham would do and how Abraham would believe him and Abraham would trust him? Yes, because he knows all things. So, but still, it doesn't negate the value of Abraham being tested and passing the test. Of course, God knew, and he also is able to empower somebody. He's able to lead them. And then you have the free will element. But the point is that in all of life, you have a sovereign God behind everything, and he's accomplishing his purposes, but he's allowing people with free will to make decisions that have value.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think, in all the books of the Bible are important, but when we get to that space in our Bible that they call wisdom literature, I think it's really important that it starts with Job. We are introduced to, because I think, Job is an older manuscript, an older story, from the time of Genesis and the books of Romans and the books of Moses, the books of Moses. And I think, telling people, where God, that we get in the beginning of that book, before we get to Job's complaining and wrestling with his situation, we get the curtain pulled back on what's going on behind the scenes. There is a devil. He is an accuser. He's called Satan right there. He's called the accuser. He's not called Lucifer. He's called the accuser. He's already manifested himself as that way. He's accusing God of putting such a protection around Job that if that protection was gone, then Job would curse him, And then the second part of that phrase is really important. It says, Job says, God, he says, Lord, he has to recognize that he is Lord. And he says, if you take this away from Job, he's going to curse you to his face, which is this is showing this relationship that we have between the Lord and the Lord between us. And this is, I think, a great mystery for, I don't think as much as Satan can understand things, there's something he cannot understand within the relationship between God and man. And the reason God allows these, why did God allow Job to go through this? I think there's trust issues going both ways. God trusted Job and believed that Job was a man who was blameless and eschewed evil, and a man who was in constant conversation with him. So he's saying, I can allow this to happen to him, and I can watch him defeat the devil and the devil's plan to have him curse me, And that doesn't mean that it may, but the thing is, I think the 40 chapters that we read there, 42 chapters that we read, multitude of them, I would say probably, what is the relation of complaint to, praise? The relation of complaint to praise, and that I think goes probably about 10 to 1. Don't you think?
Yeah,
And that's a very human standard, don't you think? I mean, because all of the media outlets that we have are built to really shovel complaints to us.
Yes.
But there's every now and then you get that very great human interest story about someone who triumphed,
Yeah, right.
I think that's why, maybe, when we get, that's why I think the microphone at the end of a championship sports game is so important, because the athlete recognizes that his physical standing was a gift. The fact that he was able to play this game is a gift. The fact that the game has rules, that if I get across that line, I get so many points. If I put it in the corner of that goal, and then when the athlete gets the microphone in his face, he says, I praise the Lord. It's and he made those decisions. He made those things. It's I think that's, the complaints, the idea, that, and Job is a very real book, just like Ecclesiastes is a very real book. In between them, you have Psalms and prayers and laments and songs of lament throughout the Psalms. And then you have Proverbs, wise thinking. And then you come back to okay, what if you have all these thoughts and you find yourself someone like Job, and then Ecclesiastes, you might be spinning out a lot of thoughts. It just doesn't seem fair. But all of that is in the Word of God for us, right? Yeah. God gave it to us in sovereignty so that we would have something to think about, meditate about, and consider.
I love it.
Right?
Yes.
I don't know.
No.
Ecclesiastes says it very well. I said, in the day of prosperity, celebrate. In the day of adversity,
consider.
Think, right?
Yeah, think. That's right. Consider. Yeah. Yes. So you touched on the sovereignty of God in regards to suffering.
Yeah.
So let's say somebody has a cancer today or some plaguing sickness, and they're in the hospital saying, "Why has this happened to me?"
Yeah.
And we would say, God is almighty, and there's nothing that could happen on the earth without him. A bird could not fall out of the tree without God, Jesus said. And then he said also, but the hairs on your head are numbered.
Yeah.
So you have a tragic thing, a bird falling out of a tree. That's his meaning, that something bad, death happens, but the hairs on your head are numbered.
Yeah.
So he is sovereign, but he's also wise. He's powerful. He knows all things. Nothing could happen to us without Almighty God.
Yeah.
So that should draw us to a very sober relationship, and that can be complaining. And we read those in the Psalms. But make your complaint unto God. I think it's Psalm 144, verse 1. Complaining, get a grip on that. Don't do it too much, but be realistic. You can do that with God. But you should land somewhere in the place of humility and surrender and yielding to the sovereignty of God, and ask for his grace and trust in him, or be quiet. Don't ask for anything, but just be submitted to him and go through what he has ordained for you. And then, he said in the Word that my grace is sufficient.
Yeah.
I know these are easy things to say. It's another thing to really live them. 1 Corinthians 10:13. But there is a way of escape, but it might not be the way that I prefer. I like to get up out of the bed and walk out of the hospital.
That's true.
That's what we all want. But there is a way of escape. It may be different from that. It may be that his grace will be with you in the hospital. It might be that he's ordained for you to be there for his own purposes, and we don't know what they are. We are longing to know, but just like with Job, he ended up trusting in God.
Yeah, and he ended up with the big blessing that Job confirmed there was, I used to know you this way, but now I see you this way.
Oh, yeah.
And we know that Job knew that the Redeemer lived. At a certain point, like I said, you get his run of complaints, which is very real and honest. He doesn't try to pretend. He doesn't enter into the pretense that his three friends try to push on him. He says, I know my Redeemer lives, and I know that I will see him. He had we think eschatology started in the 1800s, with Darby.
Yeah.
We know that Job is saying there in the middle of his trial, I know my Redeemer lives, and that at the last day I shall stand on the earth and see him.
In my flesh. So
we have a couple of understandings there, that Jesus will return, set everything right on earth, and that we will have resurrected bodies that will be able to look upon him. It's like
yeah, because he did say, though worms eat my flesh, yet I know I will stand on the earth and in my flesh. So how is that?
That's it. It is. It's
one part, the worms eat it, and the other part, in my flesh I stand and I see my Redeemer.
Yeah. It's like, and when he has tried me, I'll come forth as gold. It's like in the middle of his trouble, he could say that, just like with, Lamentations, all that Jeremiah saw, the destruction, the fire that burned the temple, the tabernacle, and all, the temple in Jerusalem, all that he saw there. And he could, in the middle of all of his lamentations, his sad songs, he has to say, great is your faithfulness and your mercies are new every morning. This thought I have to bring to mind. It's like, I think that we are learning. I mean, we're older people. It just seems like something's been lost a little bit about the nature of story. And the Bible is like, it's full of stories of people not so perfect, really, really imperfect, gaining a triumph because of not like a demonstrative triumph, where they suddenly get like a windfall, but they get a triumph of knowing God in a deeper way. And that every story that we have there, like we do have the Joseph story, which certainly is a huge triumph, but, he does say something really powerful when his brothers come to him and say, oh, now you got the power and you're just going to like cut us all down. And Joseph's response to that in Genesis 50 is weeping. He said, and I think the weeping is, he said, yep, it's very true. What you did was awful. You meant it for evil. You meant to cut me down. You meant to eradicate me. You really thought about killing me, but you didn't. But you thought I would just go away. And here I am to bring, God worked it all together for good so that I would save you and your families. So there would still be 12 tribes in Israel, not just mine, So, but I think like that's the reason, like, the Bible tells us these things. And I think sometimes there are Bible things that we just have to take at the value of the statement and who made it and who inspired it. Like, if God is sovereign, do I believe it? Do I believe what he's saying in here? Yeah, but the world shouldn't be this way. And but who made it this way, right?
Yeah. And one verse that really does minister a lot to me in Psalm 2, where God is saying that the heathen are raging and the people are imagining a vain thing against the Lord and against his anointed. And then God is in heaven, it says, and he's sitting in heaven and he's, what's the word? Do you remember it? He's laughing. Right. He's laughing.
That's right.
I wasn't testing you. I just was enjoying the
chuckling.
Yeah.
Laughing.
I didn't want to say that word because it's to think that God, you would think I'm an arrogant tyrant who is in power and fully controlled. And he's able to do this, and he's sitting in heaven laughing at the enemies that are coming against his anointed, okay?
Yeah.
But he's not a arrogant tyrant. God is not that.
No.
Well, then why is he laughing in heaven when they are doing their foolishness?
That's a good question, because I always put that with the end of Proverbs 1, where it says wisdom, Lady Wisdom is laughing because I gave you all the answers and you just didn't.
Yeah.
You didn't choose the fear of the Lord.
Okay.
I think that's like, I see the laughter not like as hilarity.
Yeah.
I see the laughter more as like, what more could I have done to show you the way? The sun comes up, the sun goes down, the rain falls on the just and the unjust. The earth is full of the mercy of the Lord. That's also from Psalm 119. And then, Lady Wisdom says, I've been in the streets talking and you didn't listen to me and you went this way. And, you missed the whole point, choosing the fear of the Lord. And I think the heathen rage because they're trying to... we're in a very therapeutic, clinical, technical, mechanical culture that wants like easy answers, and God is like really more interested in loving us and allowing us to love Him, and showing like what a relationship with Him can bring like a fulfillment that's like beyond compare.
Yes.
So you have the heathen rage because their formulas don't work.
Yes.
And let's imagine something vain. and just think about the
foolishness.
vanity of thing that have progressed over it. You go back to the Renaissance, all the vanity of their pornographic sculptures and everything like that. Just like, we don't, we're going to go back to and live like the pagans in the early Greek days. Everything was so much better when we thought Greek, and we didn't really care about what we did with our bodies because, our souls are just needing to be set free and everything. And that didn't work so well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, one second. On Psalm 2, the Lord is sitting in heaven and laughing at the foolishness, which you just pointed out, and the evolving evolution of their vain ideas. We see it with the woke culture here, right, in the modern times with a neo-paganism. Okay, so let it play itself out, and the Lord is like in heaven with confidence. Of course, he's Almighty God. And like you pointed out, maybe the laughter is more like, it's there's regret, there's pity, it's sad. At the same time, like, go ahead, give it your best shot. But my advice to you is kiss the Son, lest you perish. So that's the end of Psalm 2.
That's right.
Like my advice to you as you are working against him would be to embrace him and kiss the Son and receive from him the ministry of reality, God's reality. Because when you contradict God's reality, it's like a joke.
Yeah. And isn't like when we think about that word, when we think about a kiss and the sacredness of it, between a husband and wife at the altar, in the marriage, it's the climax. You may kiss your bride. That's like a big thing. But the idea of submission and agreement and like connection is like on all levels there when God is saying, like, if you kiss the Son, there is like a submission. You are making yourself vulnerable to everything about that other person, really. And it's like, this is what God is saying. Like, you rage because the vanity only lasts for so long. Like if your imaginations produce something, it's like, that's why there's like a new video game every week or something like that. Like, because the vanity of wasting time and sort of giving, this is the vain imagination. That's because there's a rage that we need to take an edge off the rage. So we'll imagine something vain, but it's just a pit. Where at the end, he's saying the submission to the Son, kissing the Son will make you all that I made you to be.
There you
right?
go. Yeah, that's very good. I mean, kissing the Son is, you can say, in our language, we say receiving doctrine, knowing the heart of Christ, not the mechanical elements of the Christian life like external behaviors, but kiss the Son, the heart communion with reality based on doctrine coming from God's mouth, Matthew 4:4, relating to God in truth. This is what he made us for. And the fact that people run around and discredit, God's world isn't going to end well.
No. I mean, I really find it like there's a philosophical term called the razor. And it's like the simplest explanation is usually the most concrete and the most lasting explanation. And we get to that point, all the vain imaginations, all the wars and rumors of wars, the raging part, all the vain inventions that people come up with. And, God says here, it's really very simple. Kiss the Son. 3 simple words. 10 letters, right? Is that 10 letters? 10 letters. Kiss the Son, and the Son is the one who knows you better. And he knows, if you read Hebrews, that he knows everything that you've gone through. He's suffered the way that you have suffered, and then he gave his life anyway, right? It's, so that's, seeing the sovereignty of God in the purpose of the ages is like, you could do a lot of thinking about it, but ultimately you have to know that, one day Jesus will come on a flying horse. Okay, can you believe that? Okay, that's good. That's not a vain imagination. That's a real picture that John saw. And then there will also be a square city where everything is right and there's always light. That's where we're going. And I just returned to what C.S. Lewis said. If you're heavenly minded about the ultimate reality that God is going to establish on earth, then, you can trust him, So I think people just get hung up on they want things to fit into the way, the way, to feel better about themselves. Maybe you could talk about that. A lack of trust is really because you're feeling bad, right? There's an aching, you don't like to ache,
That C.S. Lewis comment about, if you go after the earth and you just want a satisfied life, you end up with nothing. Ultimately, we're losing everything. We're losing our hair, our teeth, our eyesight, our time. But if we go after heaven, we go after God, we get both heaven and the earth.
That's true.
So when we look at the design of life and what God made it, it should become obvious to us that we need him. Mm-hmm. Like life won't make sense without him, so we need him.
That's right.
And then actually the comment that you made about, when we see Christ in life, and it takes some effort in our heart to understand that in history, whenever you have people obeying him and believing him and trusting him, there's a blessing. There's a reality of God in the life, like movements. You're a Christian history teacher, so you understand that in history there are these manifestations of God with people that humbly trust him and believe him. And then there's a huge testimony of disaster with people that are arrogant and go away from him.
Yeah. Yeah, so when you started by reading those passages from Romans 9, that you carefully, when we get to Romans 11, we get the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God. It's like there's more to it than we know. That's what Paul is sort of exclaiming there. And the second part, they're unsearchable, and his judgments are unsearchable, and they won't hunt, they may not. It says how inscrutable, human scrutiny looks at God and says it should be this way. And Paul is saying, yeah, but there's he made us and he's the potter and we're the clay, and some of us are made for honor and some for dishonor. And it's who are we to question his unsearchable wisdom, right?
Yeah, right.
That's the big thing. Right. And I often think of if there's a humility about us, I'm thinking of the story of Isaiah, there's a humility about him, and he's a king dies, and he's wondering, very capable king, one whose disobedience took him away from the fellowship, but a very capable king, Uzziah. We know that he did a lot. He even invented weapons, it seems but when he dies, Isaiah was the throne is empty. And then he had that Isaiah 6 moment. No, the ultimate throne has a holy, holy, holy counsel about it,
Wow.
And that's a big thing. I guess, here's Isaiah. If we are humble like Isaiah to recognize that, that the Lord is in charge, even in spite of, the governments and the disputes, and even, the randomness of what happens in our own lives, the flat tires and everything. It's can we see God on the throne, right?
Yeah, this is very good. Isaiah, the pain in life, the thing that's lacking, like Ecclesiastes said, that which is lacking, there's no end to it. That which is crooked cannot be made straight. So we are placed in a world that we cannot successfully scrutinize or evaluate what is really happening, but we can live by faith and be humble and worship God and trust him. And then, oh, the depths, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God is past finding out. So let's rest in that. Like, it's an awesome thing what God is doing. One other point I'd like to make, which I really look for this opportunity to say the following. The atheist will say, well, if God is so powerful and so wise, then why is there suffering? The thing they don't know is that there is a day at the end of the Bible we read, there's a new heaven and new earth. There's no weeping, no crying, no tears. There's no pain. That day is coming. So they say now they're out of time on it. Their timing is bad. They're saying if God is so powerful and so wise, why didn't he make a world without any death, without any pain, poverty, suffering, and so on, Why didn't he do that? Well, like, if you would be wise enough to, like, understand that day is coming, there's a process going on.
Yeah.
There will be a world like that. And the big question is, will you be in that world?
Yeah.
But right now, it looks like you're using this as an excuse not to believe.
Yeah. That's what I think you're right. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Like when we get the curtain pulled back on what's going on before the throne of God in Job, we understand that there's something that we don't see, and it's a part of the picture, and we couldn't handle knowing all of that. Like, you don't get an explanation. That's the mystifying thing. Job comes to the conclusion that I know God in an amazing way now.
Yes.
And he's given me an assignment to pray for these guys who are accusing me. I'm going to do that. And then we see just, all of the other temporary blessings come back to him, even 10 more children.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal, but that's the thing. We keep thinking, like, you're saying, like, the atheist says, why doesn't God, placate our feelings here and now? But there's something, you don't really understand. If God, there's God, and then there's this whole atmosphere outside of it, and there's a warfare going on there that we don't understand, we can't comprehend, and we only get little bits of it, But we do know that Daniel prays, and his prayer is heard, and an angel from there, Gabriel, is sent to him, and that kind of thing. Yeah. I'm just let's see. Okay, all right. I'm gonna give you one final conclusion here, and it's from Isaiah 2. Isaiah also, Isaiah 30, verse 18, he comes to this conclusion: the Lord is a God of justice. And here's the thing for us: blessed are all those who wait for him. So I think that's the conclusion. Atheist, we could wait. If you can wait and believe in God, the New Jerusalem will come. There'll be a new heavens and a new earth, and all things will be worked together according to his divine purpose.
And the illustration for that, I know we're a little long, but it goes like, 13-year-old boy wants the car keys.
Yeah.
And the dad says, not now. But he goes, no, I want the car keys now. I don't understand you, Dad. I don't know why you're doing this to me. I don't know. Very simple little story. But the dad is saying, no, it's my plan, my way. You're not getting the car keys now. You're 13 years old. He doesn't even have to say, you're too young, or you don't know how to do it, and you don't know what you're talking about. He doesn't have to say anything. He can just say no.
Yeah.
And like there are many people like that that are saying, I want it my way. I want to understand it my way, in my terms, and this is what I want. And God, why would you want to have a kingdom made up of those kind of people? Why not? Make it, challenge them to trust in Dad.
Yeah.
To trust in his wisdom, trust in his way, because he knows more. He is better.
Yeah. Yep. It's amazing. Family, as Jeremiah wrote it, get back to, you're in a culture that's like totally wild, and you're away from your place. And Jeremiah 29, marry, be given in marriage, have children, take care of your fields, create households. It's like really, and even in that realm, you might not understand what Dad says all the time, but God has ordained it. So, our Father who art in heaven, you're holy. Your will be done. Your will be done. That's what we're praying today. Well, friends, this has been the Grace Hour Show, a podcast from Greater Grace Church in Baltimore. You can subscribe to us at YouTube, Apple, Google, Spotify, and more. Please subscribe, give us a great review, and join the next installment of the Grace Hour Show tomorrow. So I'm Pastor Steve Andrulonis. Pastor Tom Schaller has been with me. Jehu Vandiver has been at the board, keeping us online and reviewing your comments. Thank you for all your comments. Have a great Thursday, everybody, and be safe.